That girl is no longer our daughter. My father's voice slammed across the graduation auditorium so hard that even the dean stopped clapping. I froze halfway to the stage. Hundreds of people turned toward the front row where Richard and Elaine Hallway stood in perfect formal clothes like they were making some kind of public announcement instead of destroying their own child. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My mother wouldn't even look at me. We are withdrawing all support from her effective immediately, my father continued. She betrayed this family. Phones came out instantly. Someone behind me whispered, "What did she do?" Another voice answered, "I heard she got caught stealing something." I felt my grip tighten around the diploma folder they'd handed me seconds earlier. My palms were shaking so badly the paper inside rattled. The livestream camera near the stage slowly turned toward me. Humiliation spread through the room in waves. And the worst part? Nobody questioned my parents. Because people trusted them. Richard Hallway donated buildings to this university. Elaine sat on charity boards with half the city. They looked calm, controlled, respectable. I looked guilty just standing there. Then my father pointed directly at me. "We will not be associated with someone dishonest." The silence afterward felt unbearable. I almost turned around and walked straight out of the auditorium. Then a chair scraped loudly against the faculty floor section. A man stood up. That's not what happened. Every head turned toward Professor Daniel Mercer, my thesis advisor. And the look on my father's face told me immediately. He had not expected anyone to challenge him publicly. The dean stepped toward Mercer uncertainly. "Professor, this ceremony should continue," Mercer said firmly. For a moment, nobody moved. My father stared at him with pure hatred before slowly sitting back down. My mother followed a second later, folding her hands tightly in her lap like none of this had affected her. The audience remained completely silent as I forced myself toward the stage. No applause this time. Just whispers. The dean handed me my diploma without meeting my eyes. "Congratulations," he muttered quietly, sounding like he regretted saying it. I crossed the stage feeling every camera pointed at me. By the time the ceremony ended, clips of my parents' announcement were already spreading online. Students standing near exits pretended not to stare while secretly recording me again as I walked backstage. Nobody approached me. Nobody asked if I was okay. Then my phone buzzed. Account access restricted. My checking account. Frozen. Again. My stomach dropped. That morning, I'd already received 3 unanswered calls from my father and a voicemail that simply said, "You forced this, Tracy." At the time, I thought he meant our argument from 2 weeks earlier. Now I realized something much worse was happening. I pushed through the backstage hallway and found my parents near the private donor entrance. "Why would you do that to me?" I demanded. My father didn't even hesitate. "You should have thought about that before trying to destroy this family." My mother finally looked at me then. Cold. Controlled. Empty. And for the first time in my life, I understood they had planned every second of this. Before I could answer, another voice echoed from behind us. "That's enough." Professor Mercer had followed me backstage. And judging by the expression on his face, he knew something I didn't. Professor Mercer stepped between me and my parents before either side could speak again. "Not here," he said quietly. My father adjusted his suit jacket like none of this had been emotional for him at all. "Professor, this is a family matter." Mercer didn't move. "You made it public the moment you interrupted the ceremony." The hallway fell silent. People passing nearby slowed down when they recognized us. I could already hear phones buzzing with notifications. Somewhere down the corridor, students were replaying the video of my parents disowning me. My mother finally spoke. "Tracy," she said calmly, "if you cared about this family at all, you would have kept quiet." That sentence hit harder than the public humiliation, because it confirmed what I'd feared ever since I found those financial records weeks earlier. They weren't ashamed of what they did. They were angry I discovered it. I swallowed hard. "You froze my bank account." You no longer have access to family resources, my father replied. My apartment key stopped working too. I removed you from the lease this morning. The words came out casually, like canceling a subscription. I stared at him. You planned this before graduation? You forced our hand, he snapped. Then he lowered his voice. You had everything because of us. Tuition, housing, insurance, your future. And this is how you repay us? My mother stepped closer. You should have remembered who paid for your future. For years, that line had controlled my entire life. Every decision, every class, every internship, every friend they didn't approve of, and now they were using it like a weapon. Professor Mercer looked at me carefully. Tracy, don't say anything publicly yet. I frowned. What does that mean? His expression tightened. The university found financial irregularities connected to your father. My father immediately cut in. Be very careful, Daniel. That was the first time I'd ever heard him use Mercer's first name. A warning, not a conversation. Before I could ask another question, 2 campus security officers entered the hallway. There she is, my father said immediately. One officer approached me cautiously. Miss Hallway? What's going on? I asked. My father sighed dramatically. She's unstable right now. I turned toward him in disbelief. Are you serious? The officers exchanged looks. Then one of them said carefully, Miss Hallway, we need to ask you some questions. Students stopped talking as campus security escorted me across the courtyard. Not because they respected me, because they were filming me. Every few seconds, I caught someone whispering while staring at their phone screen. That's the girl from graduation. My roommate said she got caught stealing scholarship money. No. I heard she forged documents. The rumors were multiplying faster than I could process them. Inside the administration building, an officer led me into a conference room where 2 university officials were already waiting. One slid a folder across the table. Do you recognize these transactions? I looked down and immediately felt sick. My student account number appeared across multiple financial records tied to transfers worth thousands of dollars. What is this? I whispered. We were hoping you could tell us. I flipped through the pages faster. Loan applications, business transfers, electronic authorizations. My name was attached to all of them. One administrator leaned forward carefully. Your parents informed us you've been under emotional stress recently. I looked up sharply. They contacted you before today? The silence answered the question. My parents had prepared this, weeks in advance. I pointed at the signatures. I never approved any of this. But the signatures match your university records. My chest tightened. Then, the door opened. Professor Mercer stepped inside holding another file. I need a moment alone with her. The administrators hesitated before leaving. As soon as the door shut, Mercer lowered his voice. Your father used accounts opened in your name to secure emergency business loans. I stared at him. He what? I noticed discrepancies during scholarship reviews months ago. I copied documents before they disappeared. Everything suddenly connected. The frozen accounts, the voicemail, the public disowning. They weren't punishing me. They were protecting themselves. Mercer looked directly at me. Your father expected investigators to reach you eventually. That's why they turned public opinion against you first. Outside the administration building, reporters had already gathered, and standing beside them, perfectly composed, was my mother. Family friends surrounded her while cameras pointed in her direction. We tried to help our daughter for years, Elaine said sadly to reporters. This has been heartbreaking for our family. I stopped walking. She was performing grief. About me. Students nearby immediately recognized us again. More phones lifted into the air. Then my own phone buzzed. Final notice, resident access terminated effective immediately. My apartment. Gone. I stared at the screen silently. Beside me, Professor Mercer exhaled slowly. There's one document your father never knew I copied. Professor Mercer locked his office door behind us and pulled the blinds shut. Outside, campus lights glowed through the dark windows, but inside the room, everything felt painfully still. Mercer placed a single folder on his desk. "This is the copy your father doesn't know exists." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were transaction logs, authorization records, and internal university transfer requests stamped with dates going back nearly 3 years. Then I saw my mother's signature. Not once. Repeatedly. Elaine Hallway approved transfers from my scholarship account into shell accounts connected to my father's business. I looked up slowly. She knew? Mercer nodded grimly. She handled the paperwork. Every strange moment from the past month snapped into place at once. My frozen bank account. The sudden removal from the apartment lease. The graduation humiliation. The lies about me being unstable. They hadn't disowned me out of anger. They were positioning me as the scapegoat before investigators uncovered the fraud. I sank into the chair across from Mercer's desk. They were going to let this fall on me. "If these records surfaced without context," he said carefully, "you could have faced scrutiny yourself." My stomach twisted. The university had delayed reporting inconsistencies because Richard Hallway funded half the business department building. Nobody wanted to accuse a major donor without proof. Now Mercer finally had it. And so did I. He slid another document toward me. "A sworn statement," he said. "If you submit this with the records, investigators can move immediately." I stared at the paper for several seconds. Signing it meant there was no going back. No repairing things later. No pretending my parents had crossed a line accidentally. I picked up the pen. And signed. Hours later, raised voices echoed outside Mercer's office. Then the door burst open. My father stormed inside. "You're choosing strangers over your own family?" he shouted. For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. "You stopped being family when you used my name." His face hardened instantly. "If you go through with this, you'll lose everything." Professor Mercer stepped forward calmly. "The investigators are already reviewing the documents." Something changed in my father's expression then. Not anger. Fear. Real fear. He stared at me for a long moment before turning toward the door. But my mother stayed behind. She looked exhausted for the first time all day. "If this comes out," she said quietly, "your father goes to prison." I met her eyes. Then he shouldn't have done it. Mercer's phone suddenly rang. He answered, listened silently for several seconds, then slowly lowered the phone. His face went pale. The investigators moved faster than expected. By the end of that week, state investigators had frozen multiple financial accounts connected to my father's company. 2 days later, subpoenas arrived at my parents' office building. I watched from across the street as investigators carried out boxes of financial records while reporters crowded the sidewalk. For the first time in my life, Richard Hallway avoided cameras. Usually, he loved attention. Charity galas, business interviews, university donor events. He always found the nearest microphone. Now he kept his head down and rushed into a black SUV without answering a single question. The truth came out fast after that. My father's company had been collapsing for nearly 3 years. Instead of admitting the business was failing, he secretly moved money through accounts tied to my scholarships and student identity. Loans were taken out using my information. Transfers were disguised as authorized educational transactions. And my mother had helped hide it. She approved paperwork, signed transfer forms, managed communications when banks started asking questions. The graduation ceremony wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a strategy. If investigators reached me first, my parents wanted the entire university and the public to already believe I was dishonest, unstable, and financially reckless. That way, when my name appeared on the records, nobody would question it. They had tried to bury me before the evidence surfaced. But the plan collapsed the moment Professor Mercer stood up in that auditorium. Within days, the university released an official statement clearing me of wrongdoing. Faculty members who ignored me during graduation suddenly wanted to apologize. One administrator quietly admitted, Your parents were very convincing. Several classmates reached out too. I'm sorry, one text read. I believed them. Online opinion flipped completely once court documents became public. The same graduation clip that humiliated me exploded across social media again. But now people saw something entirely different. Not irresponsible parents disciplining a troubled daughter. A calculated public setup. Civil lawsuits hit my father's company almost immediately. Fraud investigations expanded, financial partners cut ties, family assets were frozen during the inquiry. And my mother lost nearly everything she cared about socially. Charity boards forced her resignation one after another. Invitations stopped coming. Friends disappeared quietly. Months later, she began sending me letters. Not apologies, explanations. We did what we had to do. Your father panicked. We never wanted this outcome. I never answered a single one. For the first time in my life, I opened my own bank account, signed my own lease, made decisions without asking permission. Professor Mercer helped me secure a paid research position at another institution, and slowly, my life stopped revolving around fear of disappointing people who only valued control. Then, almost a year after graduation, the university invited me back to speak at an ethics forum about financial exploitation and coercive family pressure. Walking into that auditorium again felt surreal. I passed the exact stage where my father stood and publicly erased me from his family. But this time, nobody whispered. Nobody stared with suspicion. When I finished speaking, the audience stood and applauded. Voluntarily. As I looked across the room, my eyes drifted toward the front donor section where my parents had sat during graduation. The seats were empty. And somehow, that silence felt completely different now. Because the day my parents disowned me was the first day I was finally free.